At 68 years old, you stop expecting surprises. That's one of the quiet truths no one tells you about aging. You wake up each morning believing the world has already shown you its worst and its best. You believe nothing has the power to shake you anymore. Loss has already visited. Pain has already knocked. Regret has already made itself comfortable in your chest. That's what I believed. Until one ordinary morning proved me wrong. The sun hadn't fully risen yet. It hovered low behind the kitchen window, turning the glass a pale gold, the kind of light that feels gentle rather than bright. The house was quiet, wrapped in the familiar silence of routine. Every sound had its place. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint creak of the floor beneath my feet, the distant birds waking up somewhere beyond the backyard fence. And there it was, my breakfast, the same as always. Toast on a small plate, eggs done the way I liked them, and my coffee steaming, dark, served in the same plain white mug I had used every single morning for almost 20 years. The mug had no design, no logo, no chips or cracks. It wasn't special in any way, and yet it had become one of the most constant objects in my life. My wife, Ara, placed it in front of me with practiced precision. "Careful," she said softly, as she always did. "It's hot." I nodded. I always nodded. For 2 decades, I never questioned that mug, never asked why I never used any of the others lined neatly in the cabinet, never wondered why she insisted this one was better. She always said the same thing. "This one holds the heat best, Marcus." It sounded reasonable, comforting even. One of those harmless preferences married couples develop over time. I never argued, never resisted, never suspected a thing. Until that morning. Something had been off for weeks before that day. Not dramatic, not obvious, just a faint discomfort beneath the surface of my thoughts, like a low alarm only my body could hear. A weariness I couldn't explain. A fog that settled over my mornings and lifted by afternoon. I told myself it was age. I told myself it was nothing. But curiosity has a way of growing quietly, especially in men who've lived long enough to recognize patterns. And that morning, curiosity finally spoke louder than habit. Ara stepped outside to the backyard to clip herbs for her tea. I watched her through the window as she bent over the small garden, scissors snipping rhythmically. That's when I made the decision. It wasn't planned. It wasn't driven by distrust. It was something older than logic, a subtle instinct sharpened by years of watching life unfold. I reached into the cabinet and took out another mug. It was nearly identical. Same shape, same size, same plain white color, one we hadn't used in years. I poured my coffee into it carefully, feeling slightly foolish as I did. It felt like a childish experiment, like checking under the bed for monsters you don't truly believe in. I finished breakfast quietly. Everything tasted the same. Nothing felt different. And I almost laughed at myself until I stood up and carried the mug to the sink. That's when I saw it. At the bottom of the mug, clinging to the center like a deliberate stain, was a dark, thick residue. Not coffee. Not tea. Not anything I recognized. It looked intentional. My body froze. For a second, my heart forgot how to beat. The world narrowed until there was nothing but the mug in my hand and the strange mark staring back at me. I tilted it slightly, watching the substance resist movement, stubborn and dense. A faint odor rose from it, sharp, unfamiliar, almost chemical. It stung my nose just enough to make me pull back. My breathing turned shallow. I stood there, staring, as realization crept in slowly and mercilessly. In 20 years, I had never seen this before. Never. And then another thought followed, colder than the first. In 20 years, I had never washed my own mug. Ara always did. She never let me put it in the dishwasher. Sometimes she took it from the table before I finished clearing breakfast. A memory surfaced uninvited, her hands closing around the mug too quickly. Her voice, gentle but firm. "I'll take that." I swallowed hard. The sound of scissors snipping herbs drifted in from the yard, steady and calm, completely unaware that something inside me had just fractured. I wanted to put the mug down, to rinse it away, to pretend I had never seen anything, but I was too old for denial. I didn't believe in coincidences anymore. Not after burying my parents. Not after losing 2 brothers. Not after watching friends fade away one by one. And that residue wasn't a coincidence. I needed to see the original mug, the one Ara insisted I use every morning. I reached into the high cabinet where I'd absent-mindedly placed it earlier. As I lifted it, my hands began to tremble. I held it up to the light. At the bottom was a faint circle, worn, dull, as if something had been slowly accumulating or dissolving over time. Not fresh, not accidental, old, deliberate. A quiet mark of repetition. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. It was as if every morning, without knowing it, I had consumed something extra, something unseen, something hidden beneath routine. My mind raced, trying desperately to explain it away. Maybe it was residue from years of coffee. Maybe I was imagining things. But instinct spoke louder than logic. Something was wrong. The back door opened. Ara stepped into the kitchen, herb clippings in her hand. She stopped the moment she saw me holding the mug. A shadow crossed her face. Barely perceptible, but I saw it. In 40 years of marriage, I had seen her smile in 1,000 different ways. Comforting smiles, tired smiles, loving smiles. This expression wasn't one of them. "What are you doing with that mug, Marcus?" she asked. Her voice was too soft. "Just switching them out," I replied evenly. "Thought it might be nice to use a different one for a change." She frowned slightly and moved closer. "I told you," she said. "That one's better." "Better how?" I asked. She reached out. "Give it back, please." There it was. Not anger, not annoyance, urgency, fear. My heart began to race. I stepped back slightly, keeping the mug in my hand. "Ara," I said calmly, "why is this mug so important?" Her fingers curled inward, hovering in the air as if she'd forgotten what she intended to do. "Marcus," she said more firmly, "give me the mug." I didn't move. "What settles at the bottom?" I asked. She blinked once. Then again. "Nothing," she said too quickly. "Just breakfast residue. It doesn't smell like coffee," I replied quietly. Her shoulders tensed, her breathing changed. For a brief moment, her composure slipped. "You're being ridiculous," she said, forcing a smile. "Just give it to me. I'll clean it." Something inside me woke up fully then, an instinct that had been sleeping through years of habit and trust. "Why can't I use another mug?" I asked. She pressed her lips together. "Because that's the one you have to use." The words hit me like a blow. Have to. Not prefer. Not like have to. I felt my chest tighten. "What have you been putting in my breakfast?" I asked softly. Her eyes widened. "Marcus," she whispered, "please don't ruin this." "Ruin what?" I asked. "Our marriage or something else?" She backed away, trembling. "I did it for us," she said. And in that moment, I understood something fundamental. Whatever was in that mug, it wasn't an accident. It was intention disguised as care. It was routine weaponized as love. And I had been drinking it every morning, unaware, trusting, blind. Ara stood there, shaking, while the morning light exposed a truth neither of us was ready to face. And deep inside, I knew. This was only the beginning. After that morning, nothing in the house felt neutral anymore. Every object seemed to carry weight, the countertops felt colder, the walls listened. Even the ticking clock in the hallway sounded accusatory, as if counting down to something inevitable. Ara moved through the day like a woman performing a role she had memorized too well. She made lunch. She folded laundry. She asked me if I wanted tea, but she didn't touch the mug, not once. She avoided the kitchen whenever I was there. When our eyes met, she looked away too quickly, and when she did speak, her voice carried an artificial calm that made my stomach twist. I didn't confront her again that day, not because I was afraid, but because I needed clarity. Confrontation without understanding is just noise. I had lived long enough to know that. If something had been happening for 20 years, then the truth wouldn't reveal itself all at once. It would unravel slowly, in careful layers. That afternoon, while Ara took a nap, I sat alone in the living room and examined my own body like a stranger's. The dizziness, the unexplained fatigue, the occasional confusion that came and went like fog, the doctor visits where test results came back, mostly normal, the prescriptions that never quite fixed anything. I had accepted it all as age. Now, I wasn't so sure. I retrieved the mug again, this time wearing disposable gloves from the garage. I scraped the residue gently into a small glass jar and sealed it. The act felt surreal, like I was preparing evidence in a case where I was both victim and suspect. I hid the jar in the toolbox beneath my workbench. Then I waited. That evening, Ara cooked dinner quietly. She didn't sit close to me. She barely touched her food. "You should get some rest," she said. "You've looked tired lately." There it was again. Concern. Perfectly delivered. "I've been tired for years," I replied. She flinched. "I made you an appointment with Dr. Henley," she said quickly, "for next week." My fork paused midair. "You made an appointment without asking me?" She smiled weakly. "I worry." "No," I said. "You manage." She didn't respond. That night, I didn't sleep. Memories replayed themselves with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Moments I had dismissed now glowed with a disturbing sharpness. The way Ara insisted on preparing every meal herself. The way she discouraged takeout. The way she corrected me if I tried to help. And most of all, how she insisted on my medicine. She was always the one who handed me pills with water. Always watching. Always waiting until I swallowed. I felt sick. By morning, I had made a decision. I was going to see the doctor. Alone. I told Ara I was going for a walk. Instead, I drove across town to the clinic where Dr. Henley worked. My hands shook as I filled out the paperwork. I hadn't felt this exposed since the day my father died. When I finally sat across from the doctor, I didn't waste time. "Something is wrong," I said, "and I need you to tell me the truth." He looked surprised. "What makes you say that?" "I believe I've been ingesting something I shouldn't be," I said carefully. "For a long time." The room went silent. "Are you accusing someone?" he asked. "I'm asking you to run tests," I replied. "Real ones, not assumptions." He studied my face, then nodded. "Blood work, toxicology, neurological screening," he said. "It'll take a few days." "Do it," I said. As I stood to leave, he hesitated. "Marcus," he said gently, "has anyone ever asked you to sign medical consent forms you didn't understand?" My breath caught. "Yes," I said. "My wife?" He nodded slowly. That was when fear turned into certainty. When I returned home, Ara was waiting. "You were gone a long time," she said. "I needed air," I replied. She searched my face. "You didn't see the doctor, did you?" I didn't answer. Her expression hardened. "You're overthinking," she said. "You always do when you don't feel well." "No," I said. I stop thinking when I don't feel well. Her eyes flashed. I did what I had to, she said suddenly. The words hung heavy in the air. What does that mean? I asked. She walked to the window, her back to me. You were changing, she said. You were getting unpredictable. I was aging, I said. You were forgetting things, she continued, getting angry, talking about leaving. I frowned. I never talked about leaving. She turned around sharply. You thought about it, she said. I stared at her. You poisoned me, I whispered. She shook her head violently. No, she said. I protected us. My chest tightened. With what? I asked. Medication? Chemicals? She hesitated. Supplements, she said finally. Doctor-approved ones. Which doctor? She didn't answer. That's when the front door opened. Our son, Elias, stepped inside. He was 32, strong, kind, thoughtful, and utterly unprepared for what he walked into. What's going on? He asked. Ara rushed toward him. Tell your father he's being paranoid. Elias looked between us. Dad? I met his eyes. Your mother has been putting something in my food, I said. For years. Silence crashed over the room. Elias laughed nervously. That's not funny. I'm not joking, I said. Ara grabbed his arm. He's confused. Elias pulled away. Mom, he said, is this true? Her eyes filled with tears. I was afraid, she said. I didn't want to lose him. Elias turned to me. Did you feel sick? He asked. Yes, I said. Did you know about the mug? He asked his mother. Ara said nothing. That's when Elias noticed it, the mug, sitting on the counter. He picked it up. What's special about this? He asked. Ara screamed. Put it down. Elias froze. Her reaction said everything. That night, Elias stayed. We talked long after Ara locked herself in the bedroom. Dad, he said quietly, this isn't just fear. I know, I replied. Someone helped her, he said. The thought settled heavily between us. And that's when Elias told me something I hadn't known. Uncle Darius came by a lot when you were sick, he said. More than you remember. My brother, Darius. The one person I trusted without question. The one who worked in pharmaceuticals. The one who always asked how I was feeling. The room felt smaller. I think Mom didn't do this alone, Elias said. I closed my eyes. For the first time, I wasn't just afraid of my wife. I was afraid of how deep this went. And somewhere, beneath all that fear, another emotion began to rise. Resolve. I didn't sleep that night. Not because my mind was racing, but because something inside me had gone still. Too still. The kind of calm that doesn't come from peace, but from clarity. When the truth finally aligns, fear stops screaming. It steps aside and lets something sharper take its place. Purpose. Elias fell asleep on the couch sometime after midnight. I remained in my chair, staring into the darkened kitchen, listening to the house breathe. Every creak felt familiar. Every shadow belonged. Ara stayed locked in the bedroom. I didn't knock. I didn't need answers from her anymore. I had questions for someone else. My brother. Darius had always been the intelligent one, the accomplished one, the man people listened to when he spoke. He worked for years in pharmaceutical compliance, then consulting. He knew formulations, dosages, interactions. He spoke in calm, educated tones that made people trust him, including me. I remembered the visits now, how he'd stop by just to check in, how he'd ask about my medications, how he'd say things like, "At your age, stability matters more than clarity." At the time, I thought he meant peace. Now I knew better. The next morning, I asked Ara to sit with me. She refused. So I spoke through the door. "I know Darius helped you," I said calmly. Silence. "I'm not angry," I continued. Not anymore. I just need you to tell me how long. Her voice came out hoarse. He said it would help. How long? I repeated. 18 years. The words landed like stones. What did he give you? I asked. Drops, she whispered. Clear, tasteless. He said they'd calm you, make you manageable. Manageable. I closed my eyes. Did he say what they were? She hesitated. He said they wouldn't kill you, that they'd just slow you down. That was enough. I stood up and walked away from the door. Somewhere deep inside, a line was crossed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. That afternoon, Elias and I went through the house. Not frantically. Methodically. We searched drawers, cabinets, old folders, boxes in the attic. Anything Ara might have kept without realizing its importance. It was in the back of a linen closet that we found it. A small, leather-bound notebook, no label, no markings. Inside were dates, measurements, notes written in Darius's handwriting. 0.5 milliliters increased agitation observed. 0.7 milliliters improved compliance. Maintain morning intake only. My hands shook as I turned the pages. There were adjustments, observations, comments on my mood, my memory, my physical coordination. I was a case study, a living experiment. Elias read silently beside me, his face draining of color. He tracked you, he whispered. Yes, I said. He studied me. That evening, Darius called, as if summoned by our discovery. Marcus, he said warmly. Ara said you've been stressed. I smiled to myself. Come over, I said. I could use your expertise. There was a pause. Of course, he replied. Family first. He arrived just after sunset. He looked the same, well-dressed, confident, concerned. He hugged me. Good to see you upright, he joked. I didn't laugh. We sat at the kitchen table, the same place I'd consumed my obedience for years. Let's speak plainly, I said. You've been medicating me. His expression barely changed. Marcus, he said gently, you needed help. You altered my mind without consent, I replied. You were deteriorating, he said. Paranoid, emotional. Because of the drugs, I said. He leaned forward. Would you rather have left your family, he asked. Lost everything? I stared at him. You decided that for me. You would have ruined yourself, he said calmly. Ara couldn't handle you like that. And you could? I asked. He smiled faintly. Someone had to. That's when I placed the notebook on the table. His eyes flicked to it just once, but it was enough. You documented everything, I said. Dosages, effects, observations. He exhaled slowly. You have no idea what you're accusing me of, he said. Oh, I do, I replied. And so does the police. The knock came at the door, right on time. Darius turned sharply. What's this? He demanded. I stood. Accountability, I said. 2 officers entered. Calm, professional. Darius rose. This is a misunderstanding. I handed them the notebook. So is this, I said. According to you. They read, slowly. Darius's confidence cracked. Ara emerged from the bedroom, pale and shaking. I didn't know it was illegal, she sobbed. He told me it was safe. Darius looked at her with something like contempt. You were always weak, he said. The officers exchanged a glance. That was when I knew. He had underestimated one thing. Consequences. They took him that night. As they led him away, he turned back to me. You'd be nothing without us, he said. I met his eyes. Then why were you so afraid of who I might become? He had no answer. The house felt quieter after that. Not peaceful, but honest. Ara was taken in for questioning the next morning. Elias sat with me in the living room. Are you okay? He asked. I nodded slowly. For the first time in years, I said, I feel awake. The toxicology results came back 2 days later. The substances had names I couldn't pronounce, but the effects were clear. Cognitive suppression, emotional dampening, motor impairment, slow poison. Legal action followed. Doctors apologized. Friends cried. But the most difficult part wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing how easily love can be weaponized, and how quietly control can masquerade as care. That night, I washed the mug myself. I scrubbed it until my hands hurt, until nothing remained at the bottom but clean porcelain. I placed it back in the cabinet, empty, where it belonged. Freedom doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't kick down doors or announce itself with music. When it finally comes, it feels unfamiliar, like silence after years of noise, like waking up in a body that suddenly belongs to you again. The house was empty, not abandoned, just honest. For the first time in decades, no one monitored my movements. No one corrected my habits. No one watched what I consumed, how I spoke, or what I remembered. Ara had been released on bail. Darius was not. Elias stayed with me for a week, but even his presence felt temporary, like a bridge rather than a destination. We both understood that something irreversible had happened. A chapter had closed, and neither of us could live inside it anymore. One morning, I woke up before sunrise and brewed my own coffee. I used a different mug. The act felt ceremonial. I sat at the table and waited, not for fear, not for symptoms, but for clarity. And it came slowly, like warmth returning to numb fingers. My thoughts were sharper, my emotions raw but real. Grief arrived unfiltered. So did anger. So did relief. I didn't suppress any of it, because for the first time, the feelings were mine. The court proceedings were long, painfully thorough. Darius denied everything at first, claimed research, claimed consent, claimed misinterpretation. But documentation doesn't lie, and neither do toxicology reports when they stretch back nearly 2 decades. The word coercive control was used more than once. The judge didn't flinch. Ara testified last. She cried. She apologized. She said she loved me. And for the first time, I believed her. But love, I learned, is not an excuse. She received a reduced sentence. Darius did not. When the verdict was read, I didn't feel triumph. I felt finality. That's when healing begins, not when someone pays, but when the truth stops moving. After the trial, I sold the house. Every corner carried echoes I didn't want to negotiate with anymore. I moved somewhere quiet, near water, where mornings came without history attached to them. I brought very little with me, some clothes, books, and one mug, not the white one. I never touched it again. Elias visits often. We talk differently now without politeness, without pretending. He tells me about his life. I tell him about the world as I'm seeing it again, without filters. Sometimes he asks how I missed it for so long. I tell him the truth, because control doesn't begin with cruelty. It begins with concern. It begins with someone saying, "Let me take care of that." It begins with routine. It begins with trust. And slowly, without realizing it, you stop asking questions until one day you forget you ever had them. I think about that mug sometimes. How ordinary it was. How innocent it looked. How easily something dangerous can hide inside something familiar. And I think about how many people are living their lives that way, drinking from routines they never question, accepting versions of themselves that were curated by someone else. This isn't just my story. It's a warning. If someone insists you stay smaller for their comfort, they do not love you. If someone fears your clarity, they fear your freedom. And if something in your life has never been questioned, maybe that's exactly where you should look. I am not angry anymore. I am awake. And that, I have learned, is the greatest revenge of all.